Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to get started, if you want to take a seat. I'm Stephen Laster, and I'm the Chief Digital Officer for McGraw-Hill Education, and I am thrilled to be at ASU GSV today. I want to have a brief conversation, and so there's a key word there. I'd like to make it a conversation. Now, pedagogically, this room is not set up very well for conversation, but we're going to try anyway. So I hope you guys will be thinking of good questions to add to the dialogue, which will happen in just a few minutes. Before I get started, how many of you here view yourself in your primary role as educator? Small handful. Primary role as entrepreneur? Bigger handful. Primary role as investor or facilitator? Bit of a mix. The conversation I'd like to have today is really a conversation that we have inside of McGraw-Hill most days, but a conversation that I'd love to share with all of you. And very selfishly, it's a conversation that I think is central to this moment in time and central to our success. So a couple of ground rules. Number one, I don't claim to have all the answers, and certainly McGraw-Hill doesn't have the answers. And number two, I'm not raising these ideas saying that I've perfectly figured them out and perfectly implemented them, because those of you who know me and know what McGraw-Hill offers know that we try incredibly hard. We think we have lots of success, and we're beautifully imperfect, as is everybody. But before I get there, so that you understand some of my thinking, which my colleagues tell me is sometimes difficult to do, I want to share a little bit about me, not in a way of being boastful, but in a way of driving understanding. So I am a product of both public and private K-12, and I am a product of private higher education. In my early years in public K-12, I was the stupid student. I was the kid in Montgomery County, Maryland in the 60s that if I just sat still and if I just tucked in my shirt, I wouldn't make those stupid math mistakes and my spelling would improve. Now the truth is, I was the massively dyslexic kid. I was the kid who, until I was fortunate because my father changed jobs and moved to Portland, Oregon, when I got to 8th grade into private school, they found out that I actually couldn't read at all. Yet I'd got through every grade. Now I also have the gift of dyslexia, which means I have really fast processing speed, and I can annoyingly model problems in my head hundreds of times a minute and easily lose people. I'm also the father of two massively dyslexic children, and I can tell you things have come a long way since the mid-60s, and EdTech plays a major role in that. I am a kid who was saved by the Apple II. How many of you ever programmed one? It was a beautiful machine. You had dual 360K floppies and 16K of working memory. And because I was able to take that machine and write a word processor with the help of a science teacher in Portland, Oregon, all of a sudden my ideas were shareable. And I found out maybe I wasn't so stupid. I was a guy who received his captain's license at age 18 and sailed through my first hurricane as third mate at age 21 and survived to talk about it in the North Atlantic. I was fortunate to be at Bolt, Brannick, and Newman in the dawn of the internet. We were working on this thing called packet switching. Anybody ever heard of it? This other thing called TCP/IP. Some marginally important ideas. Of course, I was an intern there, and I had no idea of the importance. And then as my career progressed and I went from commercial technology into EdTech, being the son of a university president and the son of a K-12 teacher, it felt natural to stop driving commerce and start driving learning with my technology skills. I was fortunate to arrive at Babson College at the time about 2000 when Gartner issued a seminal report that said if everybody wasn't online by 2001 as a brick and mortar tier 2 college, you would be gone. Did it happen? Not totally. And I was fortunate to work with people like the Online Learning Consortium and others to understand what it really means to power education with technology. Now, the interesting thing, if you think back to 2000 and back to right now, there's one commonality between those two periods of time, and that commonality is big things are about to happen. And certainly this conference is about big things that are about to happen. At least we've got past the point in time of saying, the millennials are coming, and when they come, they're going to want to learn differently. We covered that chasm. They're here. We don't say that anymore. But there's a lot of exuberance still around this conference and around our EdTech industry. And those of you who are entrepreneurs, if you've just arrived with your idea, warning, it may not be original. See, the promise of EdTech has actually been around for a really long time. How many of you struggled to get CDs distributed in your early EdTech days to your users? Before that, how many of you were distributing videotape to your users? How old is correspondence education? And so we've always said that technology can extend the boundaries of the classroom. The real promise of today is that digital technology truly does in ways we could never do when it was a physical medium. But if we think about the promise of EdTech, it's in service of what? And this is what differentiates what we're creating from many other industries. It's in service of learning. It's in service of a very high-stakes moment in time. How many of you have kids? Anybody? About half the room. How many of you would be willing to take your child and say, let's pick 4th grade, put them into an experiment, hope it works out, and be at peace with the fact that if it doesn't, they'll just redo the year? Everybody good with that? Versus trying some consumer app that lets you pick shoes. What if you pick the wrong shoes? Does it really matter as much? So the promise of EdTech is the promise of accelerating a really important social contract. It's the contract between teacher and student, the contract between institution and parent. It's the contract that says we're going to take people full of potential, very different people, and move them along to be well-educated in service of being good members of society and in service of being productive members of a workforce. Agreed? So I sound a little soapboxy, don't I? But the reason I raise that is truly the promise of what we're all working on together. And to the extent we lose sight of that promise and focus on shiny user interfaces and focus on cool things that can happen, and we don't tie that investment of human capital back to that learning and teaching moment, I would argue we're creating a bubble. And I frankly don't want to be part of a bubble. And one of my asks is that you not participate in one either. Turn it around to be more positive. If we fully deliver on what EdTech can do for students like me when I was in school, if we fully deliver on that promise, then in fact the return of all of our hard work is scaled beautifully. Agreed? There's several real challenges, and I want to talk about 3 of them today. And again, I want to talk about them because I want to create awareness, and then I'm actually going to ask for a commitment. And the commitment will be, just so I get to the end first, is for us all to agree to work together out of self-interest and out of group interest to overcome the challenges. I recognize that many of us come here with many different business models and goals in mind. I think what brings us together is that we are all primarily mission-driven, I hope. But we all arrive here with different models. Some of us are well-established organizations serving a triple bottom line. That bottom line, it means serving our teachers and students, serving our owners through a return on capital, and serving our employees with longitudinal and stable employment. Other of us arrive here to serve those bottom lines in different ways. Some of us are grant-funded. Some of us have alternative funding models. But the point being is that if we can all rally together to serve that most important bottom line, learners and teachers, I think we can work together. How many of you ever had CompuServe? All right, more than I thought. How many of you at the same time had CC Mail or AOL? And like, how easy was it to send email in, say, the late 90s from CompuServe to AOL? You couldn't. Can you do it today? Do you even care who the email provider is today? Imagine if that hadn't changed. We'd probably all be better off, right? Imagine if that hadn't changed. In that day, it was one thing to send mail on the corporate network or within your community of CompuServe, but it wasn't truly a reliable means of communication. In fact, all of commerce was done through this thing called EDI, right? Which is either machine to machine or over fax. Today, how easy is it to order via TCP/IP and the internet? We don't even think about it, do we? Now think about EdTech today. How many of you in your products think you want to own the identity of the user? Raise your hands. None of you? None of you want to own a user account and have them log on to your solution directly? Honest? I'm sitting in a room full of liars. How many of you think you want to own, even better yet, the performance data that happens within your earth-shaking application? And because of that, you're going to create a value add. You're going to take this performance data and you're going to do something that nobody else can do, and that's your unique selling proposition. And how many think of you, if, God, those Luddites in the districts and in the colleges would just see how great you are, you're going to grow? Well, guess what? CompuServe's thought the same thing. And guess what? Owning the user in an ecosystem kind of doesn't work. And if we know one thing about education, and I've been on both sides, I was the CIO for the Harvard Business School. I ran technology and curriculum innovation for Babson College. I had a consulting firm where for many years I consulted to a wide array of institutions about their technology readiness. If any of you think this is winner takes all, stop. We don't have a customer out there that wants just one of us. They want the best elements that all of us have to offer. And so in this world of ecosystem, not winner take all, elegant interfaces matters. Anybody played with Lego ever? You've heard of it? So I received my first Legos 47 years ago. And I'm crazy enough, and my parents were crazy enough, that when my son was born, we still had them kicking around in the attic. And when he became about 10 years old, he's now 13, he stumbled on them, and he asked if he could have them, and we said sure. And honest to goodness, those bricks, those 2x4 bricks, fit beautifully on his Millennium Falcon. 47 years later. Talk about an elegant interface. Imagine if EdTech was that elegant. Imagine if when you were building something to bring to market, you didn't have to worry about rostering, identity. You didn't have to worry about the fundamentals of the plumbing, but in fact, you could take all of your R&D and focus on the teaching and learning moment. How much would you save? And then for those of you who consume, imagine if assembling your own ecosystem was as easy as picking a la carte EdTech off of a menu and bringing it together seamlessly. How would that feel? I can tell you Ben Laster loves Lego because of the elegant interface. And Lego loves Ben Laster because of the amount that he makes his parents buy. So it does take an ecosystem. Two different data centers. Which one would you rather have? The bee's nest or the beautifully, elegantly wired one? What's wrong with the bee's or the bird's nest? Any thoughts? And you don't even have to be a geek to have a point of view here. Say it again. Really hard to troubleshoot, if not impossible. That's the one, the hard to troubleshoot, that at a software level is representative of most of our districts and higher ed institutions' learning ecosystems today. It is a spaghetti of homegrown, best efforts, brilliantly dedicated people trying to bring EdTech together. How many of you that are providing education to students that are running a K-12 or a higher ed, how many of you plan your calendars for recovery days? Days when teachers can have back because the technology just doesn't work. Anybody do that? How many think what I just said is insanely stupid? There isn't a calendar out there that's built for the failure of EdTech. And having taught for 7 years, and I'm sure some of you have experienced this as well, what does it feel like when you're standing in a room about this size? You're not tenured. You've got these young minds who know quite a bit about user experience, and you get up at a podium kind of like this, and you don't have the great tech support people in the back corner that I have right now, and you get up there and the thing just fails. What happens to that teaching and learning moment? Anybody know? Goes away. And instantly that teacher, especially in higher ed, especially if they're pre-tenure, is starting to think, oh my God, there go my student ratings. And those students are thinking, wow, this guy's a bit of a fool. And what are we doing here anyway? And so we owe it to everybody to get rid of the bird's nest and to make it elegant and clean so that when bad things happen with technology, and by the way, my kids still blame me for the Netflix outage about 3 Christmases ago because I'm in tech and they couldn't watch their favorite movie Christmas Day. When bad stuff happens, and it will, the question is how quickly can we support each other in a response? So one prerequisite are elegant interfaces. One prerequisite is open standards. For McGraw-Hill, that means IMS Global Interoperability Standards. Why? It's a consortium of all of us. It's the best set of EdTech standards available. And it's community and user created, and so they're reliable. But even once we have this interoperability and we get rid of the bird's nest and things work cleanly and you can assemble an ecosystem that feels great, it's not enough. As I said before, I have very dyslexic children. My son Ben is 13. He's taking on an incredible challenge. He's learning Hebrew for his bar mitzvah. For a dyslexic to learn a second language, especially a symbol-driven second language, not so easy. The software that they've given him to practice with is fixed and rigid. So I came home the other night and he was in tears. I said, Ben, what's wrong? He goes, I get it and they won't let me move on. I answered 3 questions and they want me to do 7 more and I already know it and I've got my other homework and I can't move on. Why is this software so stupid? So as we think about building the confident learner, the learner who's willing to take risk, and the learner who's not going to get bored, and the learner who's not going to get overwhelmed, we stand at an amazing moment in time. It's a moment in time without big data and without profiling people for life and violating their ability to take smart risks in the sanctity of the learning experience. We can offer them help. We can offer them help by focusing on small data. We can view the world as knowledge maps. This particular representation is a graphical representation of a knowledge map in our math platform called ALEX. We've decomposed something like pre-algebra into 400 and something objectives or capabilities. And through curation and machine learning, we're able to put those nodes together in ways that are personalized to the learner, very pragmatically. Coming into it, we know nothing about the learner, and so what do? We do what any good master teacher would do. We begin to teach and assess rapidly. And in a matter of 20, 30 minutes, we can begin to tell them what they're ready to learn best next. We're not the only ones that do it. We're proud of what we do. Others do this as well, and that's fine. The point here is not about McGraw-Hill. The point here is that's a really authentic use of EdTech because we're keeping that learner on the confident road. They're not getting bored and they're not getting overwhelmed. We're also changing the nature of discourse between learner and teacher. Learning is inherently social. Take this data, use it for lesson prep, use it for office hours, use it for feedback. It's what master teachers have been doing forever, but now it's scalable. So I've talked today about two big concepts. One is interoperability, and make it easy for us all to be replaced. And make it easy for districts and universities to assemble through open standards a learning ecosystem that works for them. The second is about using EdTech for what it does really well, and that's to give data and insights, not macro, but in the learning moment, in ways that are authentic and safe and supportive of teacher and student. So some of you are thinking, wow, the guy from McGraw-Hill is talking about easily being replaced, breaking things up, creating an ecosystem, and sharing data, right? And you're saying, yeah, right. But we've made a deliberate decision, we who are leading McGraw-Hill into the future, to honestly do this. And so here are some proof points of that. Number one, everything we build today, both internally and externally, is using IMS Global Interoperability Standards. So inside, when we talk to our own modules, it's through IMS. And outside, it's through IMS. Because we only want to be used where we create value, and if we don't create value, we don't want to make it difficult for you. Conversely, we want to get rid of the grit in the ecosystem. If the ecosystem is going to be intuitive and engaging and efficient and effective, these are the standards with which to do it. Second point, more so than ever, we're looking for new opportunities and supporting new opportunities with academic researchers to help better understand the power of small data, not just for us, but for the greater EdTech and learning communities. So we are putting significant focus and energy behind number one, empowering legitimate research and trials with anonymized data sets that drive the trials. Number two, providing to these researchers the fundamental tooling that lets them create their own trials and their own experiments to either prove or disprove what we've already created and to help us strengthen it and to help publicly create deeper understanding of the state of the art. We do this because we're super worried that this idea of personalized and adaptive is so nebulous that it needs more research to be more finite and well understood. And we think that's good for our learners and teachers. Number three, we're working on really different business models. So we know there's a cost and access issue, and we've seen many address that. We actually think there's a different issue. The real issue is successful access. Because we know the biggest cost are students investing both dollars and time and then not completing. Turn it around. When students complete, great things happen. Nothing new. So we're partnering with innovative folks like ASU on Global Freshman Academy. And you'll see us partners with others to change the nature of the delivery model and to change the nature of the economic model in ways that drive successful access, not just access. And then lastly, we're unlocking our platforms. So many of you might think of us as a publisher. Anybody? I've heard that. Some of you know, thank you. So, when I was given this job, the first thing I said is, why me? I don't know the first thing about publishing. I only know about technology and learning. And what we've come to realize is we're really good at publishing, we're really good at curation, and we're really good at learning technology, and we're separating the three. And so where appropriate, you'll see us unlock our technology and let other people do great things with it, and we think that's cool. Where appropriate, we will publish what we think are really good learning objects. And where appropriate, we'll simply be a services partner to help build scopes and sequences that are made up of ours, others, and our customers' content. But what we care deeply about is providing all of this in a way that's open and instrumented in the purpose of the learning moment. So the ask. The ask is that we all agree to open standards. The ask is that no one of us goes for global domination, but does see this as an ecosystem. And the ask is that in everything we do and in every investment we make, we truly put that learning moment as the central outcome. And I believe if we all do that, there's room for everybody. And I think that's good. The reminder of why we should honor the ask is because of this. How many people have a Betamax machine at home? Anybody? Go. It was superior. It was. It was way better than VHS. And it was closed. So those of you who are building your EdTech Betamaxes, please stop and please join the ecosystem. Thank you.